Parts of a cell. Objectives. We will be learning about types of cells and parts of each cell type. Here's an example of a plant cell and an example of an animal cell. Entering the cell. The cell wall is a rigid layer of non-living material that surrounds the cells of plants and some other organisms. A cell wall helps to protect and support the cell. In plants, the cell wall is made of mostly a strong material called cellulose. Although the cell wall is tough, many materials, including water and oxygen, can pass through easily. Unlike plants, the cells of animals and many single-celled organisms do not have cell walls. Instead, a protein framework inside the cell, called a cytoskeleton, gives the cells their shape. After passing through the cell wall, the next barrier you come across is called the cell membrane. All cells have cell membranes. The cell membrane forms the outside boundary that separates the cell from its environment. In cells without cell walls, the cell membrane is located just inside the cell wall. In other cells, the cell membrane forms the outside boundary that separates the cell from its environment. The cell membrane controls what substances come into and out of a cell. On to the nucleus. As you go along inside the cell, you will come across a large oval structure. The structure, called the nucleus, acts as the control center of the cell. The nucleus is the cell's control center, directing all of the cell's activities. The nucleus is surrounded by a membrane called the nuclear envelope. The nuclear envelope protects the nucleus. Materials pass in and out of the nucleus through pores in the nuclear envelope. The nucleus knows how to direct the cell because of thin strands floating directly ahead of it. These strands, called chromatin, contain genetic material, the instructions for directing the cell's function. As you are about to leave the nucleus, there is a floating structure called a nucleolus. It is where ribosomes are made. Ribosomes are the organelles where proteins are produced. Organelles in the cytoplasm. As you leave the nucleus, you find cytoplasm, the region between the cell membrane and the nucleus. The fluid in the cytoplasm is constantly moving. In the cytoplasm, there are many organelles, including mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, ribosomes, Golgi bodies, chloroplasts, vacuoles, and lysosomes. Each of these organelles has specific functions in the cell. Rod-shaped structures are organelles called mitochondria. Mitochondria are known as the powerhouses of the cell because they convert energy into food molecules to energy the cell can use to carry out its functions. As you go farther into the cytoplasm, there is a maze of passageways called the endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum's passageways help form proteins and other materials. They also carry material throughout the cell. Organelles in the cytoplasm. Attached to some surfaces of the endoplasmic reticulum are small grain-like bodies called ribosomes. Other ribosomes float in the cytoplasm. Ribosomes function as factories to produce proteins. Some newly made proteins are released through the wall of the endoplasmic reticulum. From the interior of the endoplasmic reticulum, the proteins will be transported to the Golgi bodies. As you leave the endoplasmic reticulum, you see structures that look like flattened sacs and tubes. This structure, called a Golgi body, can be thought of as the cell's mail room. Golgi bodies receive proteins and other newly formed materials from the endoplasmic reticulum. They then package and distribute materials to the other parts of the cell. Golgi bodies also release materials outside the cell. Only plant cells and some other organisms have green organelles called chloroplasts. Chloroplasts capture energy from the sun and use it to produce food. Chloroplasts make leaves green. Once you pass the chloroplast, there is a large water-filled sac called a vacuole, floating in the cytoplasm. Vacuoles are the storage area of cells. Most plant cells have one large centric vacuole. Vacuoles store food and other materials needed by the cell. Vacuoles can also store waste products. Animal cells do not have central vacuoles. However, some animal cells have similar storage organelles. Inside the vacuole, there are lysosomes. Lysosomes are small round structures containing chemicals that break down certain materials in the cell. Some chemicals break down large food particles into smaller ones. Lysosomes also break down old cell parts and release the substances so they can be used again.